Good morning, South Florida, and welcome to this edition of WDNA's Frost Jazz Hour right here on WDNA's 88.9 FM, the home of serious jazz. I'm your host, Marcello Corelli, and it's good to be back here after quite a hectic end of 2020, and we're here for our first live show in 2021, and quite a way to start off with the esteemed Martin Bejerano. We had him on the show with the Stamps Trio a few months back, but now he's here doing some solo piano, and we're so excited to have him here with us. He's worked with the likes of people like Russell Malone, Christian McBride, Ignacio Baroja, and so many more. He studied at the Florida State University and studied classical and jazz arranging, and then went on to FSU, and then went to study on a full scholarship at UM. So he's been working with so many artists and has so much to share with you musically, so we're going to get right to it and start it off with some music. Without further ado, Martin Bejerano. Yeah, I wish we had a live audience for that one, but I hope a bunch of people were tuning in. That was incredible. Thank you for both of those arrangements. And for our viewers, what was the first? What were those two
Sure.
pieces you just played?
So the first tune was an original of mine entitled "B. Radley." It's kind of a little tribute to Brad Mehldau, who's one of my favorite pianists and also a very great composer. So I was kind of inspired by him and his style a little bit on that one. And then, of course, the second one was a very famous composition by the great Herbie Hancock entitled "Dolphin Dance."
Oh, yeah, that was great. And I was going to say about the first tune you played, I heard a lot of classical influence in the melody and just the way you arranged it and everything. And I know you kind of were brought up with that, classical piano training at, FSU and studying with people like Bill Peterson too, and all of that kind of coming together. I mean, so is that what you were thinking about, like when you were writing this piece and arranging it? I was curious how, especially doing arranging on the spot, because that's what pianists do. They arrange on.
Sure.
That's their job. So.
Yeah. So, definitely the kind of textural thing with that piece has a very classical kind of vibe to it, for sure. And even some of the harmony has a little bit of that as well. I just really like that kind of rolling piano style where the piano's subdividing a lot of 16th notes, subdividing the accompaniment, which is, of course, something that Brad does really, really well. And I kind of like the juxtaposition of something really busy in the accompaniment, but quiet, then with a kind of a simple, hopefully a pretty melody on top of it.
Right, so, right. It's amazing how much syncopation is going on in your left hand while you're kind of playing this beautiful melody over the top of everything, and it just doesn't seem like anything's getting in the way.
Yeah,
it's pretty fascinating.
It was tricky. I really had to. It's a lot of the classical aspect of it too. Is just kind of technically how it lands on the pianos, where the hands share a lot of the duties. So that's the right hand is taking some of those arpeggios and so on and so forth. So. Yeah, it's tricky.
yeah. And I heard I guess you said the classical harmony influence. There were some sort of cadences in there, maybe, Mozart influence kind of things, or I don't know what you would call those.
Absolutely, yeah. I really love I love classical music in general, but I really love listening and playing to romantic and late romantic composers, and definitely some of the harmonic kind of progressions and ideas kind of steal a little bit from that world, for sure.
Yeah. Also, from your studies with Bill Peterson and Leon, I don't know if I'm going to say this correctly, Leonidas Lipovetsky.
Perfect.
But
yeah.
Anyways,
perfect,
from studying with those people and other greats that you've been mentored by throughout, what would you say for students watching and aspiring musicians was the best thing that you got out of your studies in school and through being at FSU or UM, or what would you say is the most valuable?
I got a lot of stuff for sure. I owe those teachers so much. But really, honestly, I think that and this goes with some of my mentors too, some of the older musicians that I've got to play with and things. I think the biggest influence on me, or thing that really stuck with me, is how dedicated they were to their instrument and to playing music, and that always really impressed upon me quite a bit. I would often go early to my lessons with Bill Peterson and sit outside his door for half hour and eat a sandwich or something, just so I could hear him practice. And he was practicing all the time. Teaching full time. Living in Tallahassee, which there's gigs and stuff, but it's not like there's a lot of stuff happening musically. Yeah. But he was so dedicated to his instrument and always learning and always trying to improve.
Sure.
And same thing with my classical teacher, same thing with Vince Maggio, who I studied with here at UM. And it just kind of it was good because it showed me oh, okay, I guess that's what it takes, to try to get to that level. So it really stuck with me.
Yeah. But that's certainly what you're doing. You can hear it. I mean, the work that you put in, at the same time as teaching all the students you have here. So you're following the footsteps of your mentors and
trying
definitely
hard.
doing.
It's not easy.
Doing it well. Yeah.
But yeah.
But
great.
so I want to hear you play some more stuff
Cool.
before we take a quick breather.
Okay.
So what do you got next for us?
Why don't I play some? I'll play something kind of different. This is a little arrangement of mine of a Thelonious Monk composition called Reflections.
Great, great. you go, right there. Wow, that was quite an arrangement of the Thelonious Monk tune entitled Reflections. Heard a lot of ragtime and stride and triplets and all kinds of cool stuff in there. But we're going to take a quick breather, and we'll be right back in a few minutes right here on WDNA's 88.9 FM, the home of Sirius Jazz. Hello again. Welcome back to this week's edition of the Frost Jazz Hour right here on WDNA's 88.9 FM. You can also actually watch this show, I believe, on WVUM. There's now a collaboration between our station here and the station at the University of Miami, thanks to Philip Capuzzi, a student at UM, for bass and cello, great musician. So you can, I believe, watch this show also on 90.5 FM, if I'm not mistaken. But we're back here with Professor Martin Bejerano. He's the head of the jazz piano department at the University of Miami. Has worked with people like Roy Haynes, Christian McBride, Ignacio Baroa, Russell Malone, and the list goes on and on. So, Martin, thanks again for being here with us and for bringing your great music to the stage here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I always love coming here and playing at DNA. So thanks.
Yeah, and they love having you, I'm sure. First off, because you've played with so many artists over the years, I wanted to ask if you maybe could name a single moment or a performance that has stuck with you throughout your career. I mean, there's so many probably moments you could name, but if there was one that's just that you always have remembered it, throughout your career, what would it be?
Wow, that's a tough one. Let me think. Well, probably. One that really sticks out quite a bit was a concert with Roy Haynes Quartet, maybe about 2 years after I started playing with the band, and it was a really wonderful show that was at the Alice Tully Hall in Lincoln Center, which is a beautiful hall. I just moved to New York really about not even 3 years before that, and we played a set, and then Roy played a set with Chick Corea, and maybe, I can't remember who the bass player was. Maybe it was Dave Holland. I don't remember. And my dad came up, from Miami, flew up and came to the concert. And I don't know, that just kind of felt like, it felt like, okay, finally, like all these years of practicing and playing and working really hard, it kind of culminated in this thing, and having my dad come up and be a part of a show like that. And, both my parents had lived in New York City for a while before they moved to Miami. And my mom was a big music lover, so she used to go to see concerts and operas and all the time. So I remember her talking about Lincoln Center and Alice Tully Hall and, all that stuff. So it kind of had a sentimental value to it, I think. Plus, it was a great show, a wonderful hall to play, and it was just a really something that always kind of sticks in my mind.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, having your parents that have supported you throughout, and be there with you in a moment when it's kind of a dream come true to play with somebody like Roy, and it was all kind of coming together in the moment. That's I'm sure it must have been.
Yeah, they
quite
sat through all the practicing at home and rock band rehearsals in my garage and or in my bedroom or whatever, and schlepping me to lessons and paying for them, and schlepping me to recitals and to all that stuff that parents do. So it was a real nice experience.
Yeah, no, that's
and I got to meet Chick Corea, which was kind of like nice. That was the first time I got to meet him, so that wasn't too bad either.
You also got to trade courses with him, I heard too, right?
I did, yeah. That was maybe that's number 2 on the list. About a year or so after that, we did a gig. It was kind of a similar thing in Germany at this really great festival called, what's the name of that? festival. Well, every year they would change the instruments. It was called On Drums, and I can't remember the actual name of the festival. But anyway, and we played a set again with the quartet, and then Chick came out as a special guest and played the rest of the show. But then at the end of the show, he was kind enough to have me come out with him and do like an encore.
Oh, that's great.
And so we got to trade courses on the blues, and it was surreal, but also like just so much fun.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I mean, both of you guys could play drums, so you could even switch off and like play different instruments or something. Because I know.
Well, that would be awesome. Yeah.
maybe next time.
I'm down for that anytime.
Also, so you also have been touring with Russell Malone.
Mm-hmm. I toured with Russell for almost 9 years.
Wow,
actually.
wow, yeah. I've heard Russell. He's just such a sweet guy, sweet player. And I was wondering, because often it's very difficult when pianists and guitarists are working together and figuring out when to not step on each other's toes and comp together. So I was curious what that has been like, and what you've learned from playing with Russ, over the years about how to be more sensitive and and work on that, work on interacting with one another.
It's a great question, and like, to be honest, I had never really played that much with a guitar player before. That kind of wasn't very common back then, too much, in the music that I was playing. So Russell's a great guy and a ridiculous musician and a great band leader. And what was really great about him was that, I would say most of the time, but most of the time, if he had something to say or like, hey, could you do this or something? It was always so respectful and cool and relaxed, that it made it easier for me to like, to kind of not get worked up about it or nervous about, am I going to play a chord and he's going to play a chord and it's not going to work or something like that. So he was very cool about that thing, and he wasn't too like, what's a good word, like he wasn't too like strict or something about that.
Sure.
He's like, man, just play, like we're going to figure it out. If something doesn't work, we'll, so that environment, man, that's the best to be in a band with that. I mean, don't get me wrong, like we had to play the music a certain way, and obviously, but as far as that aspect, it was pretty cool. And it really just came to a point of just listening really hard, which is something that, as we talked about when I worked with your wonderful group last semester and with other groups in the schools, like it really always boils down to listening.
Seriously.
Listening and reacting and making choices based on what's happening around you, not what you maybe usually would play or typically would play or are comfortable with playing. So it really meant kind of, being able to play things that I would usually play a certain way and change them and play in a very different way so that it would work with the two chordal instruments.
Sure.
He was also really cool because he didn't have a real ego about like, I'm going to comp, I'm going to be the comper or whatever. It was just kind of like very relaxed, and it happened very naturally. So.
Yeah, no, that all comes from the trust within the band too, and
That's right.
Russ knows that hiring you or getting you to play in his band, he knew that was what he was going to be dealing with, like a lot of he was a lot of trust, and he knew you knew what you were doing, and he's also a very tasteful player himself, and so I'm sure it all came together really, really nicely. And
well, it's why it's so important. It's something that another thing that gets talked about in school a lot that I'm sure gets very old to hear it, but it's so important. It's just being prepared and ready to go, because I think when you're prepared and you know what you're doing and you come into the gig and you're solid and everything is cool and you did the work, that's when you get the trust.
That's right.
If you don't have that, it's a little bit harder to earn that trust.
Exactly. Yeah. Preparation is key, but also sacrificing certain things in your playing, like you said, like doing stuff differently to serve the music well, and
Absolutely.
to listen to others. And
everyone has a different opinion too. Like I've been lucky enough to play in Roy's group with Pat Metheny on many occasions where he plays as a guest, and he has a very specific way that he likes the piano to work with him, and that's cool. That's great, Pat Metheny. But he told me like right up front, hey, you know what? If it's cool, like, and again in a very nice way, I kind of like to do this with the piano if you don't mind doing this, And I said absolutely, of course. And then it took the guesswork out of it, which is very nice, or else I'd be playing the whole time kind of thinking like, am I comping too much, or am I playing, am I not giving, So having that kind of very specific, not rules, but whatever you want to call them, was very helpful because it put me in a position where, okay, I know what I have to do, and then it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
So everyone's a little different.
Sure. That's the beauty of it. Yeah. Thanks. That's great. Great answers. Let's hear you play some more music. That's the main thing. That's why we're here, to hear you play. So, yeah, maybe play another tune for us. What do you have in mind?
I'll play, let's see. I'll play another original of mine. I'll kind of bring it a little slower. This is a tune that, speaking of my dad, I wrote this tune for my dad shortly after he passed away. And this tune is called Last Happy Hour. And he had this little thing where, like about 5:30, he'd be like, oh, it's happy hour time, and he'd fix a little beverage
Yeah.
to drink. So this one's from my dad. It's called Last Happy Hour.
All right, take it away. Wow. Yeah. Beautiful tune. Incredible. Yeah, I heard a lot of just the dynamics you used in that. I just really admire that, and kind of reminded me of, I know a big influence of yours, Keith Jarrett.
Yeah,
And
just listening to him on the way up here, actually.
yeah. No, I just was wondering, because of the admiration you have for him, because I know he also, because I know the last tune you're going to play may or may not be a standard, but Keith Jarrett did a lot of playing of jazz standards. He stopped composing,
Yeah.
pretty early compared to most musicians. And so how has his way of playing standards influenced your way of arranging, not just standards, but anything you play?
There's a lot of things about Keith to like, of course, but maybe the two things that stand out the most, and this goes for his standard playing and anything really. And one is his kind of like fearlessness as an improviser, I went the jazz route, rather than maybe going a different route in music because of the improvisational aspect, because I love it so much, and you get a certain feeling from that you don't get from other music. Some players, there's all different kinds of improvisers and all different kinds of players, and some people, play, maybe improvise and solo and kind of like, I don't know how to say this in a politically correct way, but kind of have a certain thing that they play.
Yeah.
And then they come to the stage and they play it, and it's amazing and incredible, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. But I'm very drawn to Keith's approach, which is kind of like, let's just see what happens and let's just go for it. And it's reflected in his trio, which unfortunately is not playing anymore, but in the way that they just did not rehearse ever. Not one rehearsal in 30 years of playing. They would meet, I think, the night before or something, have dinner, talk about the tunes, maybe say, hey, do you play an A flat on that, or do you play this, And then there was no discussion of like how we're going to play the standard, or we're going to do this tempo or that. They would just start playing. Mm-hmm. So that, to me, was like, I was already drawn to that already, and then when those guys came out and did that, I was like, oh my God, it's exactly what I would want,
Yeah.
And that's why so many people copied them. After that, because they kind of like opened the door to that. Hey, man, we've heard Autumn Leaves quite a bit, We don't have to talk about it. We can just, if we're all great musicians and listening, going back to the listening thing, and we're all on the same page, and it's going to be great. It's going to be a great experience. I remember reading that Gary Peacock, when Keith called him up about doing this, he thought he was kidding. He's like, standards trio? Really? Like, that's the last thing he ever expected Keith was going to do. And of course, Keith takes this into his free improvisation solo piano concerts as well, where he just gets up and improvises for 2 hours or something, right. Which sounds like, oh, that's cool because you don't have to memorize any music or whatever, but it is not cool at all. It's very difficult, to do it at the level that he does it as well. So that's that kind of his approach to improvising and the emotional quality that happens, I think, because of it, is really stands out. The other thing about Keith is just his control of the instrument is it's incredible. There's a lot of pianists that have a lot of chops, and a lot of technique. Of course, a lot of wonderful pianists. But to me, it's very hard to think of many more pianists, too many more, that have the breadth of control and taste, to use those chops and in a way where dynamics and phrasing and all those things that are the musical aspects of playing, not like scales and notes and fast or slow or triplets or double time, but those things are always like in the forefront, So that's something I really tried very hard. It's not easy all the time, but I really tried very hard to kind of like follow that way of thinking in my playing, kind of go for it on the improvisation tip and always have, things like dynamics, expression, and all the things that are involved in playing that at the very top of what my focus is. So it doesn't always happen, but
that's a lot of great stuff in there. For anybody who's listening, just remember those things to really not be afraid to go for something and do something kind of ad lib. That's what jazz is. It's like you can't,
Yeah.
you can only rehearse so much, and sometimes it's like you over rehearse, and then it can just cause a lot of issues and a lot of overthinking and yeah, just just being in the moment and going for things and trying new things out with the band, and again, the trust thing and it's all, but yeah, and also focusing on like you said, dynamics and just the beauty of the way, like the facility that you can have on the instrument, but also being willing to sacrifice that for taste and for other things. So.
And then, sometimes playing the loudest, fastest thing you can is that's what's called for. And that's,
sure, yeah, exactly.
And that's cool, But just kind of having that hyper awareness and being able to, again, the listening thing is what it always comes back to. Just listening and being aware of like what seems to be right for the music at that point. You're not always going to make the right choice, but at least you're trying.
Yeah. Awesome. So. Yeah, we got time we definitely play one more to close out the show. Maybe we're going over time, I'm not sure, but definitely, regardless, want to hear you play one more. I heard maybe you might be playing Arigen. Is that going to happen? I'd love to hear it.
I'll give it a stab. This arrangement I did on my last trio record, for trio, and I've been trying to kind of play it solo piano, so we'll see how it goes.
All right, here's Arigen, arranged by Martin Bejerano, right here on WDNA's 88.9 FM. And before he plays, just want to let you guys know that next week we will have the Eric Stern Trio, one of Martin's esteemed students, and then the week after we'll have WDNA's very own Philip Capuzzi and his group, and many more. So without further ado, one more tune here from the great Martin Bejerano, Arigen. Killer, man.